ladies and gentlemen. I can't actually start on the official agenda until 7 o'clock, but at every meeting I do read out an introduction which isn't part of the agenda, so I can start that now as everybody is seated. So good evening and welcome to the Woking Borough Council's planning meeting. We do have a PA system, as you've noticed. Mobile phones should be turned off or on silent, and no fire drill is planned. The proceedings are filmed and will be available on the Woking Borough website. You will see from the camera position the committee members, council officers and registered speakers will normally be recorded, but speakers may ask not to be filmed, but their comments will be audio recorded. I'll now ask the planning committee, the 9 elected members, just to introduce themselves, starting on my far right with Angus.
Councillor Angus Ross, I represent Working Without Wall.
Wayne Smith, member for Hurst.
Rochelle Shepherd, member for Winnish.
Malcolm Richards, member for Norries in Woking Town.
John Kaiser, I'm the member for Barkham and I'm also the vice chair.
Tim Halton in Lower Reading and clearly the chair.
Bill Soane, member for Lotton in Woodley.
Philip Holsworth, member for Winnish.
John Jarvis, member for Twyford.
Right, thank you members. And we are also supported and advised by a variety of professional council officers. And I'll ask the officers to introduce themselves, starting on my far right.
I'm Arabella Yandel and I'm the clerk to the committee.
I'm Mary Severin, I'm the solicitor advising the committee.
Conor Corrigan, STL Service Manager. Chris Easton, Highways Development Manager. Thank you.
The planning officers presenting tonight's applications are sat to my far left, and I will introduce them at the appropriate time. Right, onto the procedure. This is a quasi-judicial committee with formal set procedures and conduct. Firstly, the planning officer will present each application. Then I will call in turn only those who have pre-registered to speak. Please come forward to the table. The microphone is controlled by the grey button on the base. The time limit of 3 minutes for each category of speaker will be strictly enforced, so please ensure you get your key points across within your allotted time. Members of the committee are interested in the quality of what you have to say, not for how long you actually speak for. I have to say, I emphasise again that only those that are pre-registered to speak may do so. No others, including town or parish councillors, agents, applicants, objectors or supporters, are permitted to address the committee, ask questions or interrupt the meeting. Following the planning officer's presentation and comments of registered speakers, the planning committee members will consider, question and seek clarification for the application and hopefully reach a decision which may or may not agree with the planning officer's recommendation. Finally, a reminder, the local planning authority's role is to determine any valid planning application using local and national planning policy. Our role is not to suggest alterations to schemes, whether they are a good idea or whether indeed they are needed, whether they are too costly or whether they are better alternative uses. Thank you very much, and as we have now gone slightly over 7 o'clock, I can move on to the formal agenda. The first item is apologies, but obviously looking at the tables in front of me, I can see we've got a full complement of councillors tonight. The next item is the minutes. Are there any amendments to the minutes, the last minutes? No? Show of hands then, all those in favour? Thank you. And then we move on to item 3. Are there any declarations of interest from anyone? No? Okay. Are there any applications to be deferred or withdrawn?
Sorry. No, Chair.
Right. We now then move on to the first item, which is agenda item 37 on page 11, which is the Arborfield Garrison. It's a reserved matters application for 114 apartments. It's before the committee as it's a major application, and the case officer is Alex Thwaites, who I shall now hand over to.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening. The proposal before you is application 172005, which is a reserved matters application for 114 apartments with access from 9 Mile Ride Extension. The applicant is Crest Nicholson Operations Limited. To give a bit of background, the site is located to the east of Shearlands Road and is located within the Ardfield Garrison Strategic Development Location, or SDL. The proposal represents the sixth phase of development on the site. The outline for the site was granted back in 2015 in April, and this established the principle of development as well as the development parameters. Again, some further background for the proposal. This plan shows the Ardfield SDL as a whole. I've highlighted some key infrastructure links on there. Of particular importance for this proposal is Shearlands Road and the Nile Road extension. This is the northern section of the SDL with all the current phases highlighted. Parcel 01 and T in the northeastern corner represent the first two phases of development, and parcels A to J in the southwest represent the third and fourth. The current proposal is for Parcel Q, and this is highlighted in red to the south of the development, immediately adjacent to the district centre and again the Nile Road extension. On this slide, I've highlighted the site. So as you can see, the development area is enclosed by the Nile Road extension to the north and to the east, and then Shearlands Road to the west. To put the site in a bit more context, I've added a few more aspects to the aerial photograph. The areas highlighted in yellow to the west of the site represent the third and fourth phase of the residential development, which I just discussed. And these have approval and work has commenced in some of the elements. More importantly though, the area in blue and the clear area to the east represent the future district centre and the Bow Hunt Secondary School. The location of the site very much lends itself to the district centre type character, and at points Shearlands Road can act as a transitional area between the high density centre and the residential units in the third and fourth phase, represented in yellow. So the premise behind the proposal is that the units proposed are specifically designed for the private renter sector, or PRS. This means the application consists of 1 and 2 bed apartments specifically built for the purpose of private renting. This in turn means that the site is professionally managed by a single management company, and this management includes the apartments, parking and the surrounding area. One of the main significant advantages of this type of proposal is that it brings forward, it introduces a type of tenure that is currently quite limited in the borough. The proposal introduces a private high-end apartments that can be rented, for example, by young professionals trying to save to purchase a property in the future. It's also quickly worth noting that PRS developments are not considered as affordable housing, but I'll come on to that in a bit. Onto the proposed layout of the development. As you can see, the main built form fronts onto the Nile Road extension, and the parking and mature planting and open space is located adjacent to Shearlands Road, which is to the west of the proposal. At outline, this site was considered to be residential in use, have a built form of 3 stories and a higher density of 37 to 50 dwellings per hectare. Analysing the proposal, the development put forward is an increase in density and storey height over the previously approved parameter plans. However, the increased unit numbers on the site will assist with the long-term viability of the district centre, particularly given the location of the site being immediately adjacent to the district centre, as I showed earlier. That will mirror these parameters proposed anyway. One important thing to note is that while the parcel will have more units on it than originally expected, the overall number of dwellings within the SDL as a whole won't change. The outline will remain as up to 2,000 units as proposed back in April 2015, and the only thing that will change is that there will be an area brought forward in the future that will be less dense than previously expected. Again, I've touched on this before, but given the location of the site, adjacent to the district centre, the 4-storey element proposed are considered to be acceptable as it will be similar in character to the district centre. Additionally, with regard to affordable housing, given the nature of the proposal, for this parcel the affordable housing contribution will be provided as a commuter's sum. So moving on to the design of the proposal, it's important to note that the proposal has been subject to revised plans, and this has been in particular to address the parish comments. You can see here's an example of some of the units proposed. As you can see from the massing diagram at the bottom, the two 4-storey elements are located next to the access road, which creates a gateway into the site, with the rest of the proposal being 3-storey, adjacent to the non-horizon extension. With regard to the open space, the development includes pedestrian and cycle links to the nearby linear park, as well as the wider SDL, which of course includes the district centre and the secondary school, which are it's immediately adjacent to. This slide really just highlights the main infrastructure links that I've discussed, with the solar access from the Narmarad extension into the development. Finally, the application proposes 157 spaces, which has been assessed and is in compliance with Woking Borough Council standards. Additionally, as quite an important side note, the on-site management company will be responsible for the management of the parking. Therefore, the proposal is recommended for approval subject to the conditions put forward and the completion of the legal agreement. Just to very quickly go through the members' update, this includes an amended Finch Hampstead Parish Council comment, alterations to conditions, so I think it's 2 of them, and they're things like plans and a slight rewording of one of the conditions, and then a further clarification on affordable housing. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much. We have one registered speaker, and that is Chris Tinker from Crest Nicholson, if you'd like to come forward.
Thank you.
Good evening to you.
Good evening. I believe there's just a few slides put on the screen. Okay, that's okay. Thank you very much. My name is Christopher Tinker. I'm a group board director at Crest Nicholson, and I'd just like to thank you for the opportunity to share a few of the underlying principles behind this development that's proposed. So within the UK, there are 23.4 million households, and 15 million of those, just over 15 million, are actually owned, half with mortgage, half without. But as this graph shows, owner occupation is on the way down and rental is on the way up. And of that rent, over 28% is considered to have a non-decent living standard. It's owned by people who just simply do not maintain. And the whole idea of build to rent, which has been supported by the government, who put quite a lot of funding into it, is that we encourage the professional institutions who manage our pension funds to take ownership of these types of developments, and to manage them professionally and properly with on-site management and on-site leasing, and to create a very different sort of asset class within which people would enjoy a better quality of rental property. From our point of view, the benefits that we get from this type of opportunity are that it meets a growing housing need, typically in the 20s and 30s, who find it very difficult to access deposits, and who often need to remain quite mobile. And this particular types of development are attractive to them. For us, on the development of this nature, we don't need to wait on the open market sales rate, so we can deliver this in parallel to all the other phases that are going on, so that we placemate quicker. It will have dedicated on-site maintenance and management, and the funds and institutions we work with on projects like this have typically been granting 2- and 3-year leases, certainly to a proportion of the tenants, giving a lot more security of tenure, a major advantage. We, as a company, have done 5 schemes of this nature so far. 3 have been urban of this type, which you normally find in city centres. And then we've just opened our first one in Crawley, which is a suburban scheme. And this at Arborfield Green would also be a suburban scheme. It's designed particularly at a more moderate form of density. And the one down at Crawley is being done with M&G, who are likely to be the partners on this particular project as well. Why in Wokingham would we consider such a development? Because it is the first thing that has taken place in this part of the country, and that's really because rental within Wokingham is less than 10% at the moment, which is far under the national average. But you also, as a borough, have some of the highest rents and some of the most unaffordable levels of rent as a consequence, because there isn't much rental stock. So from the partners that we work with, they've identified this area as one of a very strong area in terms of demand, and they feel very confident that this type of investment will work strongly on this project. I'm not going to go through the next slide because actually the officer has just reiterated the scheme design. I think all I would say is that these projects are designed for rent. So the bedrooms are different, there's a lot more storage, the corridors are wider. There are things about it in terms of the specification that make it more robust, because we do acknowledge that people will be moving in and moving out by the rental nature. So these are specifically designed to overcome many of the problems we get in transient lettings by single owner landlords, if you like, which is predominantly what happens in the area. So thank you very much, and I just commend the scheme to you.
That's much appreciated, thank you. Can we just turn the mic off, please? Okay, before I open it up to the committee, we do have a ward member sitting to my right, so I'll let him go first.
Thank you, Tim. For all the things that Mr. Tinker's just said, I think this is a good development in Barking, and I know it's supported by the parish council as well. There was some concerns about the design, but press were consulted and they responded positively. I do have a number of questions which I'd like to ask the officers. One of them is with regards to the overall increase of the number of houses granted in the outline. Does this increase that number?
No, the number stays the exact same. Like I said earlier, only the only thing that will change is that an area will come forwards and it will be less dense than previously suggested.
Okay, so what you're saying, there will be areas where the density will be low?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, right. The other question is one which is a bit lower with me. I mean, so we're talking about parking, 157 spaces, that seems more than adequate for this development and meets our more than meets. I'm just wondering why it's been unallocated and not allocated. I would have thought that it would have been a lot better or a lot easier to manage if it was allocated.
Well, there's ways to look at it in both examples, but I think the fact that this whole site is a managed site, then it kind of gives them control. The fact that actually the parking isn't allocated gives it greater flexibility to be used. So instead of it being allocated closer to the building or whatever, it just gives a spread. The visitors have a greater mix. In terms of the unallocated, though, it's worth just pointing out that if they followed the council standards to the unallocated provision, which obviously is set out in the guidance, then the level required would actually be about 30 or 40 spaces less than they're currently providing. So it's, as far as we're concerned, there's a good mix. If they were, we don't encourage it to be allocated on this occasion because that isn't what they proposed. But what they've set out actually does equate to about 1.3 spaces per dwelling. And obviously there's only 114 units there, so we're reasonably happy with it. And the fact that there's a management company on site in the office, there is a site presence rather than just being left to its own management devices.
Okay, and just, I hear what you're saying, and I believe there are adequate spaces, and that's why I'm asking why it shouldn't be allocated. I could understand if it wasn't adequate and it would need to be unallocated, but especially when the council seem to build their social housing, they seem to allocate spaces for each individual flat. So it's just a question that I'm going to
other members? Philip?
Well, reference was made to the rental levels being very high in Rugby Borough, and therefore this represented an opportunity, but I haven't seen any reference in the documentation to the level of rents that are expected from this place.
Yeah, in terms of the type of, because it's a private rental scheme, we actually have no control over it, so we couldn't actually impose that. So the market will dictate what the rent is, in all fairness.
I mean, I do welcome the scheme. Without reservation, I just hope that Chris Nicholson's been for similar schemes for 3 and 4 bedroom houses as well. What is the likely tenure on these?
It's 1 and 2 bed houses on these. Sorry, 1 and 2 bed apartments on these. So it's a mixture of the side. I'm not sure you have the exact numbers, don't you?
So maybe clarify that. What's the annual leases, or are they 3-year leases, or what are they?
I think Chris mentioned it was basically it's for kind of transient, I suppose, professionals who move about, but they rent up to 3 years and potentially more, I suppose, if whoever takes it over do it. So it could be longer term leases or they could be short. I suspect on a scheme like this you probably have a mixture of both. And the numbers, the mix in terms of how they're defined, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I don't think Chris will either.
Michelle, then Angus.
I'm afraid mine, normal things of parking. There are 41 one-bedroom flats, and assuming there's only one person in them, that's possible. But with the 2-bedroom flats, that's 73. That would mean it's going to be about 146 cars for the 2-bedroom flats, because if they're young professionals and they're living with somebody or a flatmate, they're each going to have a car, because there's no way from Arborfield to actually get any place reasonably. The bus is there, but there's no train station, and if they're going to someplace else, they really need to have a car. So that's about 190 spaces, and there's 156. So you're going to have a management company giving out tickets to everybody who parks illegally in the area, or are they planning on parking in someone else's driveway somewhere? It's just not adequate amount of parking for realism. I don't care what the parking standards are. Let's be realistic, because we tend to be optimistic on the parking standards.
When you can't answer the question yourself, I mean, all I can say is the parking standards are what they are. They went out for consultation, they were adopted by members, and we are where we are with our parking, which has gone through that process.
So we've agreed to having inadequate parking.
No, there is a policy on parking, and we've heard from the officer that it meets those standards, and in fact it exceeds those standards. Angus?
Thank you, Chairman. Just to say that I didn't declare an interest in my previous executive role with environment. I did have discussions with the applicant, but in no way anything about the planning application or this particular site. I think it's a good application. I've just got 2 small questions. Is there easy access from here, considering they've got very little open space there, to the country park, or SANG as we call it, past the district centre and the school? If there was some passage along the edge of the site, would be good. And the other question around the parking one, we say it's unallocated parking. Would the management company have the power, under the application we're approving, to allocate if there was a desire on site to do so?
So, parking on first, I think we've applied a condition that obviously discourages that, or prevents that from happening. Should obviously they want to come in and discharge that condition, then we'll need to look at it, and if more parking is needed, then we'll see if it can fit on site. But we haven't, that wasn't what's proposed, so we've just looked at what they've put in front of us and put a condition on as such.
Just to pick up on the access to the SANG. So the proposals down here in orange, there's actually a linear park that runs up through the site, and that connects most of the site with this northern SANG and also the southern SANG within the wider SDL. Shearlands Road, actually on the on the site gets cut off about here on the proposal, and then that becomes a bridle way. So that actually links cycle and pedestrian to the linear park, which will go up here into the centre.
Thank you.
Can you just clarify, on the drawing in the document pack, it shows the access to the school as a temporary access, which is obviously a roadway, and the children will be in this development. But where would the permanent access be? And is there cycleways, or is it going to be a roadway?
That was the temporary access to the building that was being used. This is the permanent access to the school, and that's the one that's open and now in operation.
Right.
And alongside there is a footpath cycleway running along, and you've also got Byway 18, which is recent. Well, this section has been upgraded, but it's been upgraded from the original 9-mile ride through to the school to allow for access from the east.
Malcolm?
Just a couple of quick comments. I quite like the idea of additional rented accommodation being available. Increase the amount available, might make it more competitively priced. Though obviously there's no control on the rent here, it's just that it's more area. I quite like the idea, Jack said that it's slightly larger corridors and larger rooms and things, so it appears to be a decent standard. It's rented, which improves the opportunity. Parking will always be the issue that everybody mentions. It's a shame it's unallocated. Just a quick question. Does this mean that if it's managed parking in its own area, that are these effectively going to be like private roads or unadopted? Or?
Yeah.
So they won't be covered by CP or anything like that? Down to the management system?
Private, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I do then have a last question. We said it's going to be managed on site. I'm not seeing an office in this application, it's only for apartments.
There is an ancillary office in the proposal. It's in the central building on the ground floor.
Yeah.
So it's just here. But it's ancillary to the residential use, so it comes under that proposal.
Is it in the agenda then?
It should be in there, yeah.
Because I was just going to say, it's not in the introduction saying that we have an office in here. I was just looking at 114 apartments.
Yeah, it's just, well, I don't know if it's done yet. Yes, I don't know if it's specified in the report, I'm sure it is somewhere, but yeah, so the office it's not a separate office that you could ever rent out, it's ancillary to the building itself, so I suppose it's like a caretaker's office kind of thing that you'd have in the building, and you'd have in a lot of managed flats anyway, and flats in general. They'd have, it's like a bin store, I suppose, that kind of thing, small office in the bottom.
So I'll just come back, where have I missed it in this document?
In the report?
Yes.
So there's reference, sorry, Chair, there is reference under the 29 of the parking section to the office, but it's a higher reference in terms of parking that goes with the office.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to come back again. Surely if we're putting an office, it should be in this application.
In terms of the description?
Well, this application is for 114 apartments. There is also an office, which is a different use than an apartment.
It's not an office for commercial use. It's an office for, it's an ancillary office to the residential. So it's not, you couldn't sell it out or rent it out as anything else. So you don't necessarily have to say it's a separate office. So it's not a mixed use development. It's a residential development that happens to have an office that goes with it.
Thank you. Wayne?
While you're thinking about that, Tim. Chris, so can you just point out on the diagram behind you?
Yep.
So we're not adopting quite a lot of these roads then?
We're not adopting any of
those
roads.
It's going to be a private site. Is it going to be gated?
No. But not where it's been shown to be gated, no.
Okay. And have we got any experience in working where there has been such a development? Because the gentleman said they've got other sites. Have we got any other sites with this amount private rented, because it's in London, it happens all the time. They refer to it as service flat. Have we got anywhere in Woking?
There's nowhere within the borough of Woking with it. No. So Reading is the closest one.
And they've got areas like this, have they, in Reading?
Yes, over by, I believe it's over by the football club.
The Majestic Stadium,
yeah.
Kennet Island.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
That's got
Oh, yeah.
allocated parking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, are there any other questions from members? Okay, well, see, you're the professional, so I accept what you've said on the office that it's acceptable. So thank you very much. Right then, members, we have the recommendation then set out for approval on page 13 with the conditions and informatives. And then in the members' update, there is one amended condition. So all those in favour of approval of this application, please show. So looking round, that is unanimous. Thank you very much, members. That's approved. Members, we have to move on. We have got this agenda. Excuse me, members, we are carrying on. Right, for those of you who won't notice, we have some members sitting to my left now, so I should just ask them to introduce themselves.
Good evening, my name is Marcia Head, I'm Service Manager at Canada.
Thank you very much. So it's agenda item 38 now, which is on page 45. It's the land west of Farringdon Road. It's a full application for a temporary sales and marketing suite with associated landscaping, and it's park retrospective. It's before the committee because it's been listed by Councillor Blumenthal. Members attended a site visit on Friday, and the case officer is Daniel Ray, who I shall hand over to.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. The application site is to the west of Farringdon Road, which is to the south of Woodlands Avenue, and is a residential estate road within the former Bournemouth campus development site. The application site specifically is within an area which will eventually become part of the incidental open space. Whilst having a positive visual amenity contribution to the site as a whole, it is not defined as open space or part of the play space as outlined within the Development Section 106 document. As you've seen, the works have already been completed and have been constructed as per the submitted drawings. Staff parking is to the side rear, with visitor parking bays directly off the Farringdon Road, of which there are 5. Although construction has been completed, which is why it's part retrospective, the use has not commenced. That's the difference between being fully retrospective. The landscaping associated with the marketing suite has already been planted and is in situ on the site. It's accepted that the building does have an impact on the visual amenity of this aspect of the development. However, this is tempered by the fact that what is being sought is a temporary planning permission for a maximum of 12 months, or when the last unit is sold, whichever is sooner, and this is secured through condition. The concern regarding the marketing suite's impact upon the area defined as play space is an obvious concern. However, the play space, as required by the Section 106, is not affected by the suites, and confirmation, and importantly for residents, confirmation has finally been received that the company who will be installing the equipment shall be on site on the 25th of September. A number of concerns were raised regarding privacy and overlooking. However, the structure itself doesn't introduce any windows on elevations that oppose nearby properties, and any views into residential windows would only occur from the highway, and as such doesn't introduce a new overlooking element. Any member of the public using the highway would have the same view, although in fairness there's likely to be less people hanging around because vehicles manoeuvring onto and out of the site. It's acknowledged that there will be a greater concentration of vehicles in this particular location. However, the traffic specifically associated with the site should be much slower and needs calming measures. Furthermore, the volume of extra traffic is likely in reality to be quite minimal. There was a worry that the diesel generator would cause noise and environmental issues. However, the generator itself has been decommissioned, and there's also a condition being included that prohibits the use of any type of generator. In any case, there's no need for one as the suite has been connected to the mains power. Just for info, there are 33 private residential properties left to sell in the Carla Homes aspect of the site. However, there's been a number of units sold off to Beauty Homes, but this isn't associated with this marketing suite. But the sooner this takes place, the sooner construction, traffic, visitors shall cease, and specifically in relation to this application, the suite would be removed. So for the reasons set out in the report and the application, it's recommended for approval subject to the conditions that you have seen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have two pre-registered speakers, the first being Viv Hill from Carla Homes.
Good evening. Thank you, Chairman. Good evening. The Planning Officer has very kindly picked up many of the points I wanted to get across this evening, but I will just run through them again for clarity. My name is Viv Hill, Design and Planning Manager at Carla Homes. We welcome the firm recommendation from your officers and highlight a number of points of relevance to this particular application for temporary planning permission before you. However, we'd first like to say that Carla apologises for the way in which some aspects of the construction work at the former Allmersh campus site have been managed and communicated to local residents. We do strive to achieve high levels of quality and professionalism and have a reputation for such. However, upon reflection, we need to improve communication for this project going forward. We are actively working to resolve the issues the Council has brought to our attention today. We acknowledge that the temporary portable sales suite, which has been placed on site, has caused some concern amongst local residents. These concerns centre on the idea that the suite has been placed on land which is to become a play area. We can confirm that the unit is actually located on a different parcel of land, which will be landscaped to form an area of green open space once the temporary sales suite is removed. This is in accordance with the approved landscape master plan for the scheme. I'm pleased to confirm that moves to install the nearby play area are well underway. Play equipment has been placed in order and an application to discharge the relevant planning condition has been formally submitted to the Council. Carla will be in a position to complete the play area for immediate use by residents within a matter of weeks. Carla wants to complete its development and deliver much needed new homes, thereby increasing the housing supply in Woking and Borough. It is very important for us to retain the marketing suite in order to speed up the sales of new houses on the development and bring the construction project to a close as soon as possible. If we cannot retain the marketing suite, the sale of dwellings will be slower and the construction works will go on for longer. The portable sales suite is temporary, and we can confirm that it will be removed upon the sale of the last house on site or within 1 year, with permission being granted whichever date is sooner. With respect to the other planning matters, we note that there is no objection from the Highways Officer regarding parking or traffic safety. Likewise, dedicated parking bays and planting around the sales suite will ensure that the amenity of local residents is preserved whilst the suite is in situ. We can confirm that the unit will be powered directly off mains electricity and will not require the use of a diesel generator at any time or other generator. We would therefore respectfully ask members to endorse the officer's professional recommendation and grant temporary planning permission for this sales suite. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. And the second speaker is Laura Blundell, the ward member. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Planning Committee. Since I first solicited this application, it has improved the site somewhat. It does look visually amenable and in keeping with the rest of the design of the development. Nevertheless, I still have residents saying to me how worried they are about the safety around the parking. The marketing suite is opposite a junction. We already have residents parking at the beginning of the junction on bends. There's already tension between the residents who live there. I have residents complaining to me about contractors parking on the pavement, residents having to push their prams and small children into the road around the corner without being able to see what's coming around. And it's got 5 parking spaces for visitors to the marketing suite at the moment. I don't know if that is enough at all. 50% occupancy for the site was hit in May, so it seems that quite a few dwellings are still yet to be sold, with people coming and going, not just once. I am comforted somewhat by the application. It says the times of operation will finish at 5 PM every night, so when people come back from work, hopefully that will be somewhat helpful, and I would recommend that this time is not extended throughout the year if planning permission is given. I'm also supportive that this is obviously temporary, it's only for a year, and it will be either for a year or when the last residential dwelling is sold, and I'll be in contact with Carla to see when that is, so we can make sure that the open space is returned to that for residents as soon as possible. I would like to commend the officers who's worked on this site, this application, because as soon as it was known that this site went up with no planning permission at all, the councillors sprung into action to make sure that the planning process was followed. I know that it has also been the council encouraging the playground to be built as soon as possible, so I'm very happy that groundwork will begin on the 25th of September. I'm also very much encouraged by what I believe is the sincerity of Carla to communicate better with residents, and they've apologised. So thank you for listening, and I look forward to your recommendation.
Thank you very much. Right, if you could just come back again on the parking for members, and I do have it was just mentioned about opening and closing times. Looking at the conditions, I'm not seeing one there, so if you could comment on that as well, please.
Well, I think the opening times, I think it would be sensible to condition time, so perhaps if we do go for recommendation for approval, we go for the times that they suggested, which I think was 9 to 5, Monday to Sunday. So 9 to 5, 7 days a week, I think.
It is a bit different on some of the days. It's like 10 to 5, Monday to Friday, okay. So it is a bit different.
Fine. If we could delegate that to perhaps myself and the chair just to agree the times, if you're happy with that as an option.
Okay.
In terms of the parking, everyone's aware that we've got a lot of development happening at the moment, and sales suites aren't uncommon across the borough. Typically, the level of parking that's proposed here is no different to what we've got elsewhere. And I think it's probably fair to say most of the sites, yes, they are typically also running between 9 and 5 of office hours. But the parking, I haven't been to any of the sites where we typically pop to some North Woking or some South Woking, and when we pop there as officers, we tend to use the marketing suites to actually park, to kind of have somewhere where we're more improved to park. And we've never had difficulties in parking. So in terms of, there isn't a fixed parking standard for something like this, because it's ancillary to the build and the development site, and it's one of those things that we haven't got a level, but from looking at what we've got elsewhere in the borough, that level of parking, 5 spaces, is sufficient, and especially the fact that it's not there, but in terms of there's parking for staff as well, which is slightly separated around to the sides. So in terms of the movement, which I hope is picked up, movement on and off of the parking spaces within the development site. Unfortunately, these are kind of some of the factors that do happen. It's not public highway at the moment. There is a KEP in place, obviously, for the wider development to obviously manage the ongoing site itself. But it is for Carl to manage. It's a private site at this moment of time. Until the site is constructed, the roads are then potentially put forward for adoption, and we move them forward. So we've undertaken an assessment of the site, taking into account that it's a construction site, and Carl responded to accept.
Thank you. Right, we have Rochelle then Malcolm.
Okay, as long as it's a maximum of a year and there's absolutely no chance that they can actually extend it, it sounds like a reasonable request to do this. My question though is, there are 33 left, and Laura said they were 50% sold, so it means they only have 66 total dwellings in this application? I'm a little confused.
No, there's a number of affordable housing units. I think they're actually have that figure for you. There's further 60 affordable housing units which go towards the unoccupied number of dwellings. Also, there are 85 units sold to Bewley Homes, where they also have units unsold and unoccupied. So actually the figures, although they seem very narrow, actually across the site and across the development, it's a slightly more generous number for the 50%.
The other comment is the fact that Laura already said that they were parking already on the street already, so obviously we have inadequate parking standards again for a development.
Just to come back on that, I know that specifically on this area there have been issues with contractor parking rather than residents. That's been more of an issue, but we have followed up on that. It has improved and got worse and got better. but I know certainly with this, you'll actually end up with a betterment because there won't be the opportunity for contractors to park there. Also, the development is moving out of that area, heading down to this area. This is the last bit to be constructed. So hopefully the contractors, as part of their camp, there are compounds there that they'll be able to park in.
So there's no absolute possibility they could extend the life of this if they don't sell the houses?
Michelle, it would come back. They would have to ask again if they wanted to extend it. Okay, Malcolm?
My question probably redundant now because some aspects have been covered. It was basically that it says here there's 257 dwellings and you've obviously got the sales office there. There's no doubt the sales office will help to sell it quicker. But I was just trying to get an idea on the timescales really. If it's 257 houses and you're going to have it for 1 year or the last house sale, how many have they built so far of the roughly?
I don't have an exact figure, but I'd say...
Are they halfway through the 250?
No, they're in the second phase. The big phase over to the west was already completed. That's all done. That's where the marketing suite is at the moment. But it's a good 10-15 minute walk to where it's currently being built. So there's a couple of units still to go in there instead of the marketing suite. And if I point out, all this is constructed. This is constructed. Some of this is constructed. This is the Bewley Homes aspect, and again, it's part constructed, but this is still to come. Again, it's part constructed, but this is the main element which is left to be done. So it's a substantial way through the development and construction. It's just not.
So it's a much smaller number got to be sold before they reach either a year or.
Yes.
And if they get to the end of the year, they've still got a number left. They would have to apply for an extension for the thing.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, members, any further questions, clarification? Okay, then we have the clear recommendation on page 46 for approval. There's the 3 conditions that are in the agenda, plus the additional one that we've just mentioned about opening times, which I and the officer are going to discuss. But it will not be any longer than 9 till 5, just so members have got that in their mind. John?
9 till 5, is that Monday to Friday or including weekends as well?
It's 7 days a week.
7 days, okay.
Okay, and then there's also the one informative. So on that basis, those members in favour of the application, please show. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much, members. Moving on then to agenda item 39 on page 61, which is the land to the rear of 3941 Lowell Road. It's a full application to 2 detached 4-bedroom dwellings. It's before the committee as it's been listed by the councillor, and the committee attended a site visit on Friday. Case officer is Katie Harrington. I shall hand over to her.
Thank you, Chair. The application is for the erection of 2 detached 4-bedroom dwellings with new access to the rear of 41 and 39 Dowden Road. The site is located within Woking Town and within the settlement boundaries. The dwellings are located to the rear of number 41 and 39 Lowell Road, but the site is accessed via Evesham Place. Evesham Place is a development consisting of 7 dwellings, including 3 detached dwellings and a terrace of 4 dwellings. The proposal has been revised to help address some concerns raised by residents, the parish and local members. Such changes include reducing the size of buildings and removing and or destroying windows. As the proposal is located in rear gardens of number 41 and 39 Abbey Road, it is a form of background development. With regard to the assessment of background proposals, policy TB06 and Borough Design Guide take into account that back gardens are now classed as greenfield land rather than brownfield. As a result, such policies require proposals to make a positive contribution to the character of the area. In terms of street scene impact relationship, whilst being located to the rear of 4939 Loudon Road, the proposed unit is based on to Evesham Place. As a result, both dwellings would have a functional relationship but also contribute to the character of Evesham Place. In terms of layout, the proposal would make a positive contribution to the character of Evesham Place due in part due to its layout. The proposal would replicate the existing layout numbers 2 and 3 Evesham Place. These are located to the side of number 4, and the proposal seeks to replicate this in this type of arrangement. The result is that the proposal will logically round off development within this close. In terms of scale massing, the proposal has been revised to reduce the scale massing from that which was originally submitted in order to be more in keeping and complement the character of Evesham Place. Evesham Place is characterised by dwellings which vary in their scale massing. For instance, the footprint and the scale of number 3 is different from those of the terraces. Whilst proposed dwellings could be larger than some of these dwellings, given such variation in the street scene, and that the dwellings would not appear cramped in the plot, they would complement the area's character and not appear out of character. In terms of height, the proposed dwellings would be lower than those of the upper dwellings of Evesham Place. This is a section through the site across here, and that's proposed unit 1, and these are terrace dwellings. You can see that the dwelling is lower, and this is unit 1 and unit 2, which are the same height, so they would be lower. The detailing of the proposed dwellings have been designed to complement the area's character. There is some variation in design of buildings of Evesham Place, including different roof forms, such as the gable here and the pitched roofs of the terrace, and some hipped roofs here. The facades of the dwellings incorporate some of these aspects to provide some interest in the street scene and complement this area's character. Similar materials used in the existing dwellings would be incorporated in the scheme, which is required by way condition. A number of concerns have been raised with regard to issues of overlooking. With regard to rear separation distances, the proposed dwellings would face, the rear elevation of proposed dwellings would face towards the rear elevation on number 25 and 23 Latter Close. The Borough Design Guide requires a distance of 22 metres between rear elevations. The proposal would exceed this. There's also an area of landscaping here which members saw on the site visit. This is proposed to be retained by way of condition. With regard to front distances, Unit 2 here would exceed the front to front distances required by the Borough Design Guide. For clarity, the distance between the front elevation number of plot 1 and the flank elevation number 7 should be 9.5 metres, not 10. That is within the members' update. The windows of this front elevation of Unit 1 have been revised to avoid the overlooking to the garden of number 7. There is a window on the upper floor to number 7, and this is obscure glazed. So to avoid overlooking, there is no window on the upper floor here, an obscure window on the upper floor there, which has been conditioned, and there's a bedroom window here. But given the position of the garage, and that it's not directly overlooking this window, there'll be no loss of privacy. With regard to garden depths, both the gardens of number 41 and 39 and those of proposed dwellings would exceed the requirements, or the required 12 metres required by the Borough Sign Guard.